I would like to introduce to you the speaker today, Jose. He's already in the call. Jose is the engineering manager from Google. Over to you, Jose, to give us a bit introduction and kickstart the session.
Hi, everyone. Happy to see everyone here. I see a lot of people, so pleasure being here. So today, as we had said, we are going to talk a bit more about how to have fantastic team. At the end of the day, having a good team is what we need to realize our visions and our products. Without that, companies are nothing. This is a massive topic from finding people, hiring them, which is what we want to discuss today. But it's a lot of aspects about also retention, rewards. It's massive. So with this in mind, just a bit about me. As you can hear by my thick accent, I'm originally from Spain. I'll do my best to speak clearly. Again, ask if you have questions or you don't understand something. I have two stages in my life. I'm a former entrepreneur as well. I had a company back in Spain for 8 years. So I know exactly what you're feeling and what you are going through. I have a lot of things I wish I knew that I've learned after that once I moved to big tech. And I learned plenty of extra skills from the management point of view, hiring point of view. And this is a bit of what this presentation is also about. I'm trying to share some of the things I wish I knew that I think I could have helped me a lot when I have my company that I've learned these years working for others. Okay. One of the first things we always say, okay, we want a high performance team. It's what obviously is what everyone wants, but what's exactly that? How does it feel a high performance team? Someone willing to share in the chat some of the traits that you think a high performance team has? There are plenty of dimensions. But one of the really interesting things to think about is all of those having a high performance team, it's an output. It's the result of plenty of the actions you do. The one way of thinking about this and one metaphor I usually compare it's like a garden. You don't go to a shop and you buy a garden. You can buy some seeds, some trees, plant them. What you can do is you can put fertilizer, you can water the plants, you can trim them. Those are your actions. The output of the second order effect of all of those is having that beautiful garden. It's exactly the same with teams. So don't always focus on what are the first order of actions you can do that will produce eventually that fantastic team with the traits you are looking for. What are the things that we can control when we think about teams? So one of the big ones, you'll hear a lot of things, this one, the cultural values. What's the culture and what's the values you want to set in the team? A bit of those is what some of the comments said. So what's the ownership model that you want to have? What's the ownership you expect from people? What are the communications? What's the attitude towards risk to encourage experimentation, support, education? There are others that are also very, very related with hiring or with the people side, like recognition, growth, feedback, education. Others, it's the size of your team, the structure. In all of these areas, they are not right or wrong. It's just think about what your company needs, what your product needs, and push for that. And lastly, one of the really important aspects is that composition and diversity of the team. So what are the skills, seniority, background? We're going to dig a bit more into that because that's always the first step. When you think about hiring, you need to start from that one. What's the mix of people you want to have? Okay, so one of the important things, you'll heard in plenty of articles, plenty of books, okay, diversity is important in the teams. But why is that? I think if you think about that, it's super simple. On one hand, there is no person that is perfect at everything. So you need a combination. And on the other, even if, in the other hand, if you have everything of the same, that tends to be bad or at least suboptimal. Because yes, in a team that is exactly the same role, the same profile, the same type of skills, you tend not to have conflict, but you miss on plenty of things. One of the very common patterns that we see in companies, and I made a mistake myself, it's all engineers. At a company that starts more on the tech side, you have some friends, of all the founders, everyone is engineer. It can be fun, but then you learn in the hard way that you have a lot of blind spots. You need someone who understands sales. You need someone to understand product. You need to complement that. So that's the extreme example, but you can apply that also to much smaller teams, even engineering teams or product teams. You need to think in these terms. You're not trying to find clones with exactly the same type of people. Something that happens very often as well. It's when we start thinking about hiring, we start from the job description. I need an engineer. I need a CTO. I need a COO. And you just leave it there. If you leave it at that level, you just go, try to put some ads, try to hire people. But if you think about what is the skills, the soft skills, the extra components that a person needs to bring to a team, suddenly you have other opportunities. Yes, of course you can go hiring, but maybe you discover that you already have someone with most of them in your team, in your company. And just with a bit of extra training and a bit of extra support, you can move that person there. That's something that will be good for their career, retention, and engagement for the company. And maybe what you can do is focus on hiring an easier role. So when you think about the next layer, what are the different contributions that you expect from that person? It opens you a lot of extra possibilities. Because plenty of times what happens with hiring is we make our life very complicated because we don't take and pick on those low-hanging fruits. So I want to give you a few pointers to think about diversity. There are much more, but high level. Obviously, the first level you have are the hard skills. So if we put engineering role, front-end engineer, back-end engineer, infrastructure, you can apply that to any specialty in the company. I'll make most of the examples more focused on engineering because it's my background. But if you want to share anything, feel free to put the comments. The other level you can think about is, okay, we know that there are some hard skills, this knowledge. There are also the soft skills. You can think about if someone is good in public speaking or good mentoring, leading teams, solving conflict. All of those things are good. And again, plenty of times you can think, oh, I want a product manager that is really good with vision, really good solving conflicts, communicating, and leading teams. Maybe you have somebody or a candidate that could be good at everything, but for example, the solving conflicts. But if you know you have one of the engineers in the team that is fantastic at that, you can think about them as a partner. You can think about complementing them, and as a unit, they cover everything you need. So you make your hiring problem easier, and at the same time, you are giving opportunities to others. So that's one of the examples of thinking about that. Other dimensions, we tend to think about probably a seniority, a team of all senior engineers or all junior engineers. Almost for sure you'll have problems, except in very, very, very unique circumstances. That mix is very important. The other one, it's a bit about the mindset. You have people that are creators, ideators. They may be really good at solving problems and coming up with options, but not that good at executing. So one of the things that you want to make sure as well is, apart from those skills, you have people that can complement each other. If you have a team that it's only good at coming up with potential solutions, ideas, you'll have fantastic roadmaps, but almost never you'll be able to execute. You need also the other part of the team with people who are very execution driven and can just go step by step. Maybe not as innovative as the others, but working together is how you get something better. And the same one on the gender side, background, countries, all of that, it's another level. So that diversity, what brings you, it's everyone, we bring our own experiences and our own biases to the teams. If you have people from very diverse backgrounds and areas, it's a way of making sure that you have more points of view to think about solving problems or to think about designing products. So in the long term, that really makes a massive difference for the teams. In general, is one of the things I always optimize. I try to make sure that I don't have in every team more than 2 or 3 people that are extremely similar. So when we have problems, we really have that diversity of point of views. This is a bit to set the mental model. Now let's go to the more actionable stuff. So if we think about the life cycle of the teams, it's a never-ending loop. You always have a need. You think, okay, I need to cover this gap or to build a product or, okay, or to build a product or because I need to, someone left and cover a spot. Then you think about hiring. You need to spend some time ramping up someone. That's a very delicate step. Then you spend time executing and then ramping down. People change roles, leave the companies. That's also something totally fine, but you need to think about that. Again, we'll focus on the hiring, but the ramp up, the execution part are really big. The only thing I want to mention on the execution, think all the time about that recognition, how you're going to recognize the good behavior, or what's the career of the people. What a bit of what I touched before. Sometimes you have a need of a role, you can think about the people you have in the company. If they don't have all the skills that you need, you can help them to develop them. That's something that not only will increase the retention, at the other day, it reduces the most risky and expensive part of the hiring. At the same time, will help you to solve problems later when you're thinking about how you can convince people to join the company. Even if maybe you are smaller, you cannot compete with the big companies. That's one of the really good incentives you can offer. You can offer growth, experimentations. That's one of the strengths you have as a startup that other companies don't have. So keep this in mind. We'll dig into this a bit later. So the hiring, it's usually probably one of the most important things you need to do, if not the most important. It's basically because it's the highest lever you have. And it can go in both ways. Think about when you brought the right person to the team, somebody who had all the skills, who fit with the culture. The impact can be 10x, not just one more person. The opposite can happen. Sometimes somebody with the perfect skills, with all the knowledge on the paper, can really break a team if it's breaking the culture, if it's not collaborating well. So it's really high stakes, this part. And really, this is one of the things that it's never enough, the amount of energy you put on hiring. And one of the common mistakes you do, I've done plenty of times learning the hard way, you need to do something, you get more desperate, more stressed, you have pressure, and you can compromise it. It's super risky. It almost never works. Really, it's better to really have very clear what you want to have for the people, who you want to hire and why, and be willing to spend more time until you find the best person for that. But never lower the bar and never ignore the signals about somebody who is maybe meeting some of the hard skill needs you have, but the cost, because it's damaging your team, your culture, it's so high. The good news. So I just gave between quotes the bad news. There are also good news. At the end of the day, hiring a lot is about common sense or sales. You can think in both angles, depends on how your brain works. You just need to look for a win-win. It's a situation when you need to find how, for two parties, you find that mutually beneficial agreement. And the other thing that it's really important that sometimes companies forget is honesty first. Honesty always pays off. Be upfront, show the shortcomings you have as a small company. You have a lot of other strengths that you can leverage. Be super clear about that. The worst thing that can happen is hiding some things and then discover them later. It creates charm. It's the same with the candidates. That's the part you cannot control. You can mitigate it by improving the interview process, but at least you can control your part. Always be super clear about the good and the bad things and the risky things. The other part is just with a bit of process, we can make hiring less risky and much more consistent. I have a friend, actually, one of them, that company that I had, we were three friends, the ones who put that. We ended partying together, different stages in life. Every time I go to Spain, usually every year, I have a coffee with him. And years ago, one of the coffees I was having, his company, he built a new company. It was growing a lot, but he had a lot of troubles trying to find the right people. Also, he is a service company. He was hiring software engineers. He had a big problem with the senior segment. And over a few months, we worked together. Just a bit of what I'm sharing here. I worked with him to try to define the process. That helped him to accelerate 3 times his hiring rate and reduce the bad hires. So really, just with a couple of these tips, if you apply them, you can increase that a lot without compromising or without suffering. So for hiring, the first step is planning. Is what at the end of the day is what we discussed before. Think about what skills do you need. don't settle, don't zero down on the job description, on the role profile. You need to think about what's the knowledge that person needs to bring. What are those soft skills and any other trait that is important for you or for that team that you have. After that, hiring is simple but not easy. You just need to answer these three questions. Where can I find candidates that maybe will meet my requirements? Then it's how can I confirm that those persons meet my requirements? And the last one is how can I convince them? How can I build the case so they join and we work together? Do you think about this as a funnel? These are the stages. It's a pyramid. In this case, Google Slides didn't have a funnel picture I liked, so I'm picking the pyramid, but usually just twist it 90 degrees and it will be better. So you have the base, that's sourcing. In the sourcing, you want to go broad. You want to find all the potential candidates that will fit your needs. Then usually what you want to do, because you also need to be efficient with your resources. You don't want to spend 90% of your time hiring and interviewing. So you want to add some layer to filter the obvious no candidates. You want to ask yourself the question of, okay, is this person worth to spend time with interviews? Then is when you go to interview. It's the part that you should spend a decent amount of resources per candidate. That really important decision. And lastly is the offer stage. So a few pointers for the sourcing. I think one of them, again, going back to the previous point, one of the points that we tend to oversee a lot, even in big companies as well, I can do that sometimes in the teams, internal sourcing. So think about people who are interested in making lateral moves, maybe changing from engineer to PM, or sales or pre-sales to engineer. Think about all of that. That's a really good opportunity you have. And if you are not tapping on that, I encourage you to have chats with everyone about, hey, what are your plans? What else would you like to learn? Because maybe you don't have anything now, but in the future you have a need that you can cover. And this is something that is going to really help you with the retention, the engagement of the people. So really start from that. And it's a very low risk move because you know that person. You know how they work. The risk of hiring is that you are bringing a new person to the team and it might or might not work. And you already spent a lot of resources in time and money for that. So you want to avoid those mistakes. The second way of sourcing referrals, there's a reason why almost all the big companies, they have a referral program. So think about that. If you have somebody already in the company, you know them. If they tell you that they know someone who could be interested, two things happen there. They are kind of pre-validated. On one hand, if you know that person, you can read a bit between the lines of, okay, if this person says that this is a good engineer, I can go that and get a sense. So you have some valuable information. It happens also the other way around. For the candidate, if they know that person, that they know the company or who will be here. So you have half of the work done from the referrals. So that's the other part that if your problem is more at sourcing, think about this. Try to always start from the referrals because you are going to save a lot of time. You're going to get much higher quality candidates. The next level for that will be networking. You go to events, you know people. Maybe you haven't worked that much with them. It's more superficial, but still it's useful. So it's one of the areas that with lower effort, you can get a lot. Then the next one, it's cold calling. Plenty of times we forget about this one. But if you think about that, this is what all the messages you receive in LinkedIn about, hey, I'm looking for this profile. Most of the best candidates, most of the best people, they are not going to be actively looking for a job. Sometimes you need to nudge them. You need to be prepared for a high fail rate. So most people won't reply. And that's absolutely okay. But think about that. And then the next layer, you have to do that. It's the posting a job, LinkedIn, any platform, whatever. Obviously, you'll get a lot of people, but you expect to have much less signal versus noise. So you need to put much more effort in that filtering there to make sure that things work. The screening stage. This is the part of, okay, once you have a lot of potential candidates, how you can optimize a bit your resources. So this, don't think too much about that. You need to do something, but not overcomplicate that. You just want to filter the clear no's. So people who think about what are the questions that you can ask, what are the checks you can do to make sure they have the minimum bar you're looking for, that they will fit in the culture. Really simple. Think if you can standardize that, this is a good one to spend some time trying to have maybe a checklist. So anyone working in sourcing, they can filter the candidates at scale. And we get to the interview, which is always one of the really, really challenging parts. So the key thing to remember and how to frame the interview process. You need to design your interview process, your questions, be biased towards optimizing for false positives or minimizing false positive, even at exchange of the false negatives. What means? It's much more, you think about the impact for you. It's much more expensive and costly hiring the wrong person than missing out on a good candidate. It might be harsh, but again, your loyalty, your priority is the company and the team. So it's something, if you think in those terms, you cannot compromise. Plenty of time, sometimes maybe a good candidate, because they had a bad day, we pass on them. It's still worthwhile if you think about that. The risk of bringing the wrong person, it's really high. So always think about this mental model. One of the things you can implement for that, by the way, it's if you like someone but doesn't quite meet the bar, you can have a second list and maybe reach out 1 year after. If everything works well, you can still make it work. And it's the way you have to try to account also for those cases that maybe someone had a bad day or the match between the interviewer and interviewee wasn't that good. So when you're thinking about the interviews, you have 3 goals in mind. You need to think about and make a decision about if you want to work with that person, the culture side. You need to make a decision about if that person has the skills you need. That's the part that also you need to be open. If you map the skills and the value instead of just the role, is when you can be open to maybe pivot a bit. Maybe you're interviewing someone for a software engineer role, but when you're chatting with them, you feel that the skills are a bit low, but actually they are pretty strong on product side, and you have an open for that. So be willing also to pivot there and have that conversation with the candidates. And the other big thing that you need to do is minimize biases. All of us, all the humans, we have biases. It's a fantastic tool for evolution, but it can harm us in some cases. And biases, you don't remove them. You can mitigate them. There are a couple of options to do that, but there's 2 examples of the biases. One of the things that can happen is we tend to like people similar to us. If that happens, what the effect is if I'm interviewing someone with whatever connects with me and ticks, I might oversee some signals that are obvious that that person is not what I'm looking for, but because I like them more, I'll be biased towards that. Or it could happen the other way around. Maybe because for any reason I'm biased against any trait, I might miss out on somebody really good. How do you do that? So first thing, when you think about interviews, just put the time, always put a couple of sessions in general for every candidate. For me, the sweet spot is between 2 and 4 rounds. I think that tends to give you all what you need. For every session, think about the structure. Think about how much time you want to spend in introduction, how much time you want to spend in technical questions, how much time on cultural fit, and leave space for the candidate to ask questions. That's good for them. That's part of your sales process. And you can also learn from what the people ask. Once you have that structure in mind, think about always try to involve multiple people. That's the best tool and the simple tool you have to control the biases. Just not have only one person getting the sense and making the decision. If you involve 2, 3 people, that's more than enough for you to have a clear sense of, okay, I know that whatever decision we make is not going to be biased. And connected to that, when you know what you want to gather, how you want to structure, and the people, make an explicit plan about who is going to get every piece of information to confirm the traits you have. Because what you don't want to have is you spend the time on having 3 interviewers and everyone asks the same question. Spend a bit of time coordinating. Again, you can, at Google, at big companies, we have a pretty standardized process. You don't need to go that far. This can be something super lightweight. No need to build it the same for everyone. Choose whatever it works for you, but just remember these ideas. Try to apply these concepts in the way that works for your company. A couple of things to keep in mind about this interview stage. The process is bidirectional. So all the time, you are getting the sense if that person is the right fit for the company. The candidate is going to do the same. So think also about the experience. Think about the information you want to give them. At the same time, you need to start from this moment or even earlier to sell the company, to understand what the candidate is looking for. So you can think about, okay, how can I build that proposal that is a win-win for everyone? Again, don't try to constrain there. You have much more flexibility than large companies. Use that in your advantage. Learn as much as you can so you can build that case later. Okay, going a bit deeper. When you think about how to interview someone, you have in general, there are plenty of schools of thought. You can summarize in 3 types of questions. You have the hypothetical questions. You ask someone for, hey, what would you do if this happens? You can learn a lot. Personally, I don't like them too much. The problem you have with those questions, it's you cannot know and you cannot tell if someone just is repeating something they read in the list of the 20 most common interviews. So that's, if they are good speaking, explaining, you won't go through that. The type of questions I personally really like, it's Amazon, it's the main type of questions for Amazon, for example, are the behavioral questions. The theory behind this, it's past performance, past actions are a good predictor for how somebody is going to work. So all are the questions more on, okay, if I want to learn about how somebody is good at conflict resolution, for example, I say, hey, tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with your manager, with a peer. You think about the question. If that happens, what you are doing is you are anchoring the question to that past specific experience. And that has 2 properties. First of all, you can ask questions and you should be specific. You should ask them you should drill and really understand what was the role of that person in the project or in the action. And it's fine if it's only partial. It's not a test. But with that, you can really learn about how that person behaves. And at the same time, as an interviewer, it's very easy to detect inconsistencies. Because as you drill into the details, if somebody's making that up, you'll notice that. You can get much easier if someone really internalizes the behavior or if it's trying to not be totally honest. So that's why for me, these questions are the core of my interviews. And then the practicals. When you think about hard skills, of course, you need to have something that is related with that core knowledge that a person is bringing. For engineers, the classic examples are system design, coding interviews. And there is something that you should always avoid. Please always avoid that. Any type of trivia questions. There is no value in asking somebody in the software side, for example, what's the difference between virtual types or static types. Anyone can go to Google and search for that. That applies to any role. So regulations on HR, whatever. Don't make sure you don't ask never those type of questions because they are not going to give you any real signal. In the real world, they won't need to have that knowledge in their brains. They should use the tools they have around. Okay, let's say that you're going down the steps, you have different people interviewing, how you manage bias. So one of the simple things you can do is you can predefine a very high-level rubric. So what you do is you have 3 interviewers, you agree on those 3 general buckets, but again, whatever works for you, could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. My advice is not to overcomplicate that. And what you do is just a simple trick. You ask everyone to, after the interview, they put the different scores, they put the notes, and they think about that yes or no decision, but they don't share that. Because one of the big biases we have is if I go to interview someone and I see the results of the previous interviewer, I need to be biased towards that. So that's something really important. Make sure that everyone, if you spend the time of having different interviewers, makes those decisions in isolation. And later, what you do is you create a forum. It can be virtual, it can be in person, where everyone shares that at the same time, and then you discuss. And in that conversation, always make sure you have one decision maker. For example, at Amazon, the name is Bar Raiser. There's one person in that committee that has the conversation, and the role is to make sure that they hire someone who is better than 50% of the people in the company. That's title, and that's the way of having that tiebreaker. At Google, for example, we have hiring committees. There is one person leading the committee, different interviewers give the input, answer questions, but that person is the one making and consolidating everything. Always think about that. If not, it's going to be an endless debate. So you want to start with that role upfront. And the last one that tends to be complicated as small companies. For me, I remember the biggest problem was making an offer that was very, very competitive on the money front. It's something that you can you cannot is going to be correlated with the size usually in the States, and you cannot compete against big, large companies. And it's one of the things to put up front. But again, the part is think about win-win. You have smaller companies a lot of advantages over big companies with maybe more resources, but that they cannot offer to candidates some experiences, some learnings that you can. Play by that. Don't hide the money aspect. One of the good things on the money, it's up there, hundreds of studies on that. So money satisfaction is not linear. At the beginning, 10% increase in salary, it's a 10% increase in happiness. Up to a certain level, there's a threshold in which a 50% increase in salary might drive maybe a 10%, 5% increase in satisfaction. So really don't, even if it's one of the big things, of course, don't only focus on that and not obsess with that. Focus on the rest of the things you can do to complement that package. Ideas and things, for example, I was doing. So in my case, what we're doing is we were offering a lot of flexibility. We opened the office very close to some universities. So we were saying for people who wanted to get practical experience and at the same time, before they finish their studies, we said, okay, just come here. For you, the commute is very easy. We cannot pay as much as some of the companies, but we can adjust to your schedules. So that, for example, one of the things that we did. Things that you can think about and as you grow in different stages, it depends on the company profiles. I think one of the big things is changing roles. So for an engineer, changing to a product manager role tends to be very complicated in big companies. It's a long process. You need to show a lot of things. One of the things that you can, between quotes, take the risk, give it those opportunities. It's one of the things that can be a really good deal for everyone in your company. Or the other way around, it's some roles might want to explore becoming engineers. You can think about, oh, maybe someone that has been in sales, he knows this well, knows a bit of coding, I can train them. All these opportunities, they are not that available and that easy in other companies. Emphasize that. That's one of the things you can do. Now, other things, there's a lot of talent. Now it's easier to work distributed. You can think about offering flexibility from where you work from. Different companies have different policies. You can adapt that to that. You will move faster than Google. For example, we have a common guideline. Even if I want to, I cannot decide the flexibility I'm going to give to my people. I'm going to piggyback on their global guidelines. For you, you can explore that a bit more case by case. One of the big things that you could explore as well, and again, you know better the market, and this is one of the parts that now you want to share some examples, some challenges, please bring them. But think about plenty of talent is being around the world. Maybe some people is interested in going home. One of the things that you can explore is reaching out to people that they've been living abroad and, hey, do you want to come back? I have this type of role. This is what I can offer. Never underestimate that one because you might be offering a fantastic value, a job they like in the country they want to be. So think about those strengths and really be extremely open and clear about what you cannot offer and what your limits when you have limits, and open to have the conversation and emphasize those strengths you have. I think sometimes we can undersell ourselves and the companies. Explain that one. That's really the most powerful tool you have. And again, when I hear that smaller companies cannot compete against big companies, I really, really disagree. It's true that head to head on salary might be very complicated, but there are a lot of things that a big company cannot dream to offer. And it's the things that you can do. It's true that not all the candidates will value that, and it's fine. It's like when you're selling your product is not for everyone. Usually, if I was the mentor on the product side and you tell me that your product is for everyone, I wouldn't believe that. I will challenge you. No, tell me what is your customer. Segmentate that more. This is the same. Accept that not all the potential candidates are for you. Focus on that segment. Really, really define what you can offer and go all in there. I think because we are towards the end, I think things that I would like to all of you to keep in mind. I think hiring, creating teams, it's about inputs and outputs. Always separate that, spend the time and say, okay, yes, the fantastic team is the output I want to have, but what are the actions, the first order actions I can do that is going to lead me there, or that is going to increase the chances of being there? Because there are things that you cannot control. Again, I think the gardening is a really good example. Gardening, you have intentions, but you need to adapt and be flexible. Teams, software development is the same. Then always start from the team composition, but go deeper than just the job title. Don't silo that there. Think about what are the skills you need, what are the non-hard skill traits you need to have. And the last one is thinking outside the box. And that applies for maybe you don't need to hire a role if you move some people around, or you can train someone, or when you are negotiating, you can think about something that you can offer that will tip the balance towards your side. Okay, I hope these were pointers that will make you think. I know it's a lot of information in a short amount of time.
So because it's the last sessions, it's the last masterclass of the series, just want to congratulate everyone. You made it this far, and thank you for joining us over the last few weeks with the sessions. We want to say a big thank you to everyone who joined the sessions, and the speaker and the people who contributed the content, Jose, and a lot of other speakers who joined us in the previous sessions as well. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your expertise, Jose.
Happy to chat. I hope it was useful and I gave you a couple of ideas.
Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. So everyone, just want to say that yeah, that's we pretty much wrap up the series. We hope to see you again in the futures for the other activities of the Google for Startup Accelerator team for the local startup community. See you very soon in the future. Thank you, everyone.